So most people hear the word Kufr and immediately think it means disbelief. Kafir becomes disbeliever, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who disbelieved. And in some verses, this translation gives enough of a context to understand. However, in the whole of the Qur'an, the translation leaves a lot of detail out. So in this video, we're going to explore what the root meaning of the word Kufr is, since it's such a vital word to understand the Qur'an and its message. And we're going to explore how the Qur'an uses it and how it distinguishes between Kufr and simple disbelief. And finally, we're going to understand and apply the term in its proper context to understand why it matters for us and why Kufr is not just a label for non-Muslims. So the best place to begin is with the Arabic root word. The Arabic root for kufr is of the root kaf, fa, ra, carrying connotations of covering, agricultural connection, covering, like is done in the context of farming, covering seeds, concealing something with the earth, hiding something from view. The way a farmer places a seed then covers it, the way a seed is hidden beneath the soil. So this agricultural sense of the word is not just a root connection or basis, but it's actually used by the Qur'an itself in several verses. For example, Surah 57 Al-Hadid, verse 20, where the Qur'an describes in a verse which says, "Know that the life of this world is only play and amusement and adornment and boasting between yourselves and rivalry and wealth and children, like a rain whose growth pleases the Qufr, the tillers. Then it dries and you see it yellow, then it becomes debris." So the imagery is clear, the rain falls, the gardens grow, and its growth pleases the tillers, the Qufr. So we've established that the root word of kufr carries agricultural senses of covering up, like how a seed is covered by the earth. When we consider the religious sense in which it's most commonly used in the Qur'an, and we talk about how it's commonly translated as disbelief into English, there are several verses we can present which problematize this translation. So the first example we take is in Surah Al-Baqarah chapter 2 verse 6, where God says, "Indeed those who did kufr, it is the same for you, whether you warn them or you do not warn them, they do not believe." Now if we accept the translation of disbelief, then the verse is redundant because it says, "Indeed those who disbelieve, it is the same for you if you warn them or not, they do not believe." But given the senses of the word in the root, we can already tell that those who did kufr, it's like to say those who covered up. So here the connotation it takes is denial. Those who denied or rejected, it is the same for them whether you warn them or you do not warn them, they do not believe. Due to their rejection, belief is impossible for them. We get the same distinction in Surah Al-Anfal chapter 8 verse 55. "Indeed, the worst of creatures with God are those who kafaru, those who did kufr, so they do not believe." Now here, this is kind of the smoking gun. If we use the translation of disbelief, then the verse would read like, "Indeed, the worst of creatures with God are those who disbelieve, so they do not believe." And this becomes very strange statement when translated that way. Now, if we take the more basic root-based translation of denial in the religious sense, we get a statement like, "Indeed, the worst creatures with God are those who denied, so they will not believe." They cover up, they reject, they hide the truth, they deny, therefore they do not believe. They do not believe because they cover the truth. So it's both a moral diagnosis and the result of disbelief. The verse also shows that it's exactly their kufr, their rejection, their denial that is preventing them from belief. So it's not arbitrary, but rather their own posture, their own moral posture makes belief impossible for them. And this makes them the worst creatures with God because they themselves are their enemies who are preventing themselves from faith. Okay, so now we're starting to think of kufr as denial. And denial gives us a much more fertile idea to explore and compare to other verses of the Qur'an. And one of these verses is in Surah An-Nahl, chapter 16, verse 83, where it describes the exact mechanism of Kufr applied to a real context. It says, they recognize the favor of God, then they deny it, and most of them are kafirun. So it's to suggest they recognize the favor of God, His blessings, then they deny it, and here the word is not the same root as kufr, they disregard it, shall we say, and most of them are deniers, kafirun. So their disregarding of favors of God, blessings that they recognize, they comprehend, such as the rain that allows cultivation of crops, the alternation of night and day, how God subjected livestock for us that feed us, that give us milk, that give us meat. All of God's favors at length are all recognized, comprehended by these people, yet they disregard, and this rejection makes them kafirun. So their denial of something that they comprehend, their covering of the truth, is what makes them kafirun, deniers, rather than just disbelievers. Now, we can also look at a further verse which talks about the relation between the truth becoming clear to you and then kufr as denial of something that is already apparent. There's a verse in chapter 3, verse 86, where it says, how shall God guide a people who kafaru, who denied after their belief and witnessed that the messenger was true and clarities came to them, and God does not guide the wrongdoing people. So in the context of where this verse occurs, it's actually referring to the people of the scripture, such as the Jews, for instance, of Medina, you could say, many of whom saw the prophet, saw his message, saw that the message was consistent with their scripture. They recognized the truth. They witnessed that the messenger was true. The clarities came to them. They had full recognition, yet they denied it, even though it all made perfect sense. And their motivation as to why they denied it is not the focus here. There's other verses that go into that. And of course, there are some who did accept, so it's not even mutually exclusive. However, the point here is that they had the full clarity, the party in question, yet they denied after it was apparent to them. And that is what the denial is, the covering of the truth, rather than simply disbelief. So God explicitly juxtaposes being grateful to Him versus denying Him, such that denying Him is equivalent to being ungrateful to Him. And this makes perfect sense, because if you deny God, you're denying all the favors He had upon you, things that are apparent, which you can testify to, which you can see with your own eyes, and throughout your whole life. However, by denying God, you necessitate ingratitude for every single thing He did for you. So now, why does it matter? Why does it matter if kufr is denial and not simply just disbelief? What does it change as to the message of the Qur'an, or how we apply it, or how we understand reality? So the first point here is that if we just think of it as disbelief, it flattens the Qur'an's language. There's verses like we cited before where it says, those who kafaru fahum la yuminun, they do kufr, so they do not believe. And if we just think of it as disbelief, then we're just reading it as they disbelieve, so they do not believe. But when we think of it as denial, we get the full picture. We get the idea that their disbelief is a result of their denial of truth that was apparent to them. And so they are stuck where they cannot believe due to their own denial. More importantly than that, seeing the word in its proper meaning changes its moral meaning. Disbelief is just something passive in English, something about your beliefs, your positions. It could be resulting from somebody who hasn't heard the truth, somebody who's confused, somebody who's unconvinced. But kufr is far stronger in the Quran, far more morally charged. it's somebody who's refusing to acknowledge something that's clear. They have already seen the truth, they have understood the message, it made sense, however, they are rejecting. It's a moral posture rather than just a state of belief. And now perhaps the most important point of why it matters is that it prevents kufr from being othered. If you think of Kufr and kafir as somebody who is simply just not Muslim or rejected the Muslim faith, then you do not apply it to anybody who accepted or follows or was born in this faith. But the Qur'an's usage is deeper and more serious. It's not a racial or ethnic category or a group affiliation based or label based category. Rather, it's the person's response to evident truth. So we had the example from Surah Al-Imran where it showed people who witnessed the messenger was true, yet they still were in a state of kufr. So it's equally possible for a person who identifies as Muslim to witness that the messenger is true, yet ultimately be in a state of kufr, denying what is already apparent of the truth in even what they have purported to accept. So kufr is not something that is out there or other and can be safely restricted to other people. It's a personal question that the Qur'an is asking of how you yourself are responding to the truth. Are you, by your actions, your words, any context of what you are doing or saying or embodying or standing for, are you denying the truth that you purport to have accepted? So to summarize, the Quranic usage of the term kufr and kafir carries connotations much deeper than simply disbelief. It has a core meaning with a strong agricultural sense of covering. When applied to the truth, therefore, it takes the meaning of covering the truth, denying the truth after it's apparent. It also carries connotations of ingratitude, the opposite of gratitude as it is used in the Quran. Therefore, just thinking about it as disbelief leaves a lot to be desired.
تلك آيات الله نتلوها عليك بالحق فبأي حديث بعد الله وآياته يؤمنون